Welcome to the 37th episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, still recording from home, we'll be talking about using tabletop gaming to find the positives to this currently negative world. I'm Adam.
I'm Matt.
And we're part of GameFor. GameFor is the app for connecting tabletop gamers, which is currently hibernated because of the overall kind of global pandemic. And people shouldn't be getting together right now to game in person. But because it's hibernated, we've kept on with the podcast and to talk about how to do things like what we're going to be talking about today, how to keep yourself positive and how to keep yourself motivated in gaming and how to look at new games and all kinds of different things. And we do this every 2 weeks, and we're going to keep doing this to hopefully help the gaming people, the gaming audience, and to do what we can while we can during this time. So, what have you been doing with your time recently, Matt?
So I recently got another adventure into our long-running D&D campaign. Long-running for me because normally after, like 5 or 6 sessions, it just falls apart. But the nice thing about the pandemic is nobody can go anywhere. So I've been able to captivate my audience. But yeah, they recently leveled up, and we're starting to explore new areas of the dungeon. And our stealthy ranger guy got some protection gear and decided that he no longer needed to be stealthy, and picked the exact wrong part of the dungeon to use that new character trait. So it brought out, I think when I first counted, about 50 or 60 characters, like creatures and bad guys and stuff that all ended up in one battle that took us about 4 hours to complete. It was absolutely insane.
Wow. Yeah.
I was one of those, like, I don't know how I could have run this on a regular table. I would have had to probably turn it into a more of a role play than an actual combat, because there's no way I would have been able to, even with dice, keep track of all the numbers.
Yeah. And I mean, just like with that's one of the benefits, honestly, of playing virtually like this, is that the bookkeeping, I think, can be a bit easier in certain situations.
Yeah, and I don't even want to know how long it would have taken either. But yeah, it was kind of crazy, and it was funny too, because I like, even in like the description for the campaign, they're like, if this happens in this room, this happens, and it's like it just cascaded everything at just the wrong point that it made it kind of epically funny. But no, they actually made it out fairly unscathed, not too bad. There's a few that I think were getting nervous, but yeah, I think that's our biggest battle today for sure.
It's always good to make the players a bit nervous, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. But then again, I'm getting a character ready for a D&D one-shot that someone I met through GameFor, actually. He's going to be doing a one-shot for a few people, a couple guys that I game with normally, some people he knows. It sounds like it's going to be kind of Halloween themed, which will be fun. But yeah, I get to be a character rather than a DM, so looking forward to being on the other side of the table for that.
Yeah. And then that way you don't want to be that nervous, then, I suppose.
Right. Yeah, I want to, a challenge, but not too challenging. I want to, kick back, take names, and all that fun stuff.
And lots of fat loot at the end.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What other kind of things you've been doing? Have you been doing anything crafty?
Not totally crafty. I've been doing a lot more 3D printing. Got some buildings coming together. Actually found a new filament printer supplier, which is nice, because I had been pretty much... there was a local one that I was trying to use, but I just... As much as I'd like to shop local, everyone that I know of, it seems like, has had issues with their filament, and I'm having issues with the filament with it snapping halfway through a print. So I'm not even getting clogs. It's just in the extruder, it's just breaking because it's not flexible in some parts, and so basically just all of a sudden, no filament gets fed in, and my print is ruined. So I got off of them, and I really did not want to go back to Amazon, but that's really the only place I was fine that with shipping it was cost effective. But then found a new supplier that's, I believe they're out of Florida.
Hmm.
But yeah, I'm getting it for actually even cheaper than I was getting for Amazon. And I bought 3 rolls and about halfway through the first roll, and it's really good filament so far. So
That's
I'm
good.
actually, I've got, there was one piece of a building that kind of was in different parts that I had to reprint because I found that there were some parts that didn't come out right on the first print. So I reprinted it with the new stuff, and so I actually could see it like side by side. And yeah, there's a remarkable quality difference, which is always fun. So it's nice to get better quality and cheaper prices for sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. That is beneficial. Yeah, I guess I never realized that there were so many. I mean, I've done a relatively limited amount of 3D printing in comparison to you specifically, but yeah, I guess I didn't. I've only ever used like the 3D printing filament that I got like from the same place that I got my 3D printer, like Monoprice.
Sure.
And I guess I've never. I mean, again, I've not like tweaked my machine like you do, and I don't probably try to go to such tight tolerances either. I think, but it has been a while since I printed, so I bet you if I tried to use that stuff now, although like I've got I think at least 1 or 2 reels or whatever that are still like sealed and like airtight, like vacuum pack little baggies, because that's what the way that filament generally comes is it usually comes in like
Right.
an air.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's yeah, because it's trying to keep the moisture out of it. So like
Hmm.
for stuff I have open, I've got a sealable like tote, and then all of the like silica gel packs that I get from
Any
anything
kind
you
of
buy on.
electronic. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, you buy. It seems like you get it in a lot of stuff. I just kind of toss them all in there,
Hmm.
so it's actually pretty filled with that stuff, and then just kind of store stuff in there. And it seems to work pretty well. There was some filament that I just used that I hadn't used since pre-pandemic, so you're looking at 7-8 months at least since I had
Hmm.
probably used it last. And it started printing fine. You wouldn't have known that it hadn't been used for a while. So.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Whereas like the stuff I was talking about earlier was like fresh out of the bag, brand new stuff. But
And still
yeah,
was causing trouble. Yeah.
yeah. So far, filament's been getting a lot easier to find. Like there was a couple months where it was you were just lucky to find like anything that was available. Now it's kind of gotten to the other extreme where there seems to be some new brands out there, and everybody seems to be almost overstocked. And
Hmm.
so yeah,
Yeah,
prices are
yeah.
coming back down, quality's going up. So
That's good. Yeah.
yeah. So how about you? What have you been up to?
Well, let's see. I've been working on, and I mentioned this in the last episode that I was building the Night Haunt warband for Warcry. They're kind
Mm,
of
yep.
spooky, ghosty dudes from Games Workshop. It's part of the fantasy line, the Age of Sigmar stuff, and I'm going to be using them for Age of Sigmar Warcry, which is kind of a skirmishy kind of offshoot of Age of Sigmar. It's kind of like Kill Team is to Warhammer 40k, Age of Sigmar, or sorry, Warcry is to Age of Sigmar. But
Okay.
yeah, so still played on a very small board and usually played with relatively few models, like usually less than 15 or so. Um, so yeah, I had built them all up and then I, textured their bases and did all that stuff, primed them. And then I used TurboDork actually on all of them for their main coloring. Um,
Yeah, I saw
you know,
that.
the the the
That came out really nice.
the turbo shifty kind of colory stuff. Yeah, so that was I was thinking about like what colors I was going to do them in and all that stuff, and then I started thinking, well, I've got a bunch of turbo dork anyway, and so I could use that, and that would be kind of cool. And I don't want to say ethereal, but a little, just the sparkly kind of stuff. So yeah, I've been doing that. I started painting on Twitch with those. I did 2 sessions. I did Friday last week, and then this past Monday, and the first 6 are done. I just have to finish up their bases. I don't usually paint the bases too much on stream because it's sort of boring.
Mm.
So the next stream that I do will be on Friday, and it will be actually it'll be the 23rd, and I'll be working on. I won't be working on the Warcry guys. I'll instead be working on some board game pieces because I'll be painting. Technically, I will be streaming through the Board Game Geek Twitch channel, but I will be hosting it on my channel as well.
Oh, okay,
Um,
cool.
from what I understand. I'm not sure. I don't know how I'm going to see the chat very easily. I haven't figured that part out yet. This is a new
Huh.
thing. Usually I just stream
Yeah.
direct to my channel, but because it's, long story short, this is for Essen.
Mm-hmm.
So Essen is like the largest tabletop gaming convention / trade show in the world. It takes place in Germany, Essen, Germany, strangely enough.
Right.
It's called Essen Spiel.
Right. So
And
big that you just have to say where it's at versus the actual like Eschenspiel name, like
right,
kind of
exactly. Yeah.
like Cannes, like everyone knows that Cannes is the
Yeah,
or
yeah. But yeah, so it's I'm working with the folks from Board Game Geek again, and so I'll be painting just on Friday earlier than usual. I usually start at like 10 in the morning. I'll be starting at 8 in the morning and painting for 3 hours, talking about some sort of board game pieces. I haven't honestly completely 100%. I think it's probably going to be some Hellboy parts just because I have them. But
okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure if like they had ones that they asked you specifically to do, or
I mean, we have in the past. Like I did those
like
models
Gloomhaven
for the Gloomhaven Jaws of the
yeah.
Lion. I did those. They sent to me, but this time I was like, well, this is what I've got, and they're pretty cool models, and so we're gonna go with that, I think.
Very cool.
Anyway, but yeah, so I'll be doing that, and then potentially I might actually paint on Twitch on my own channel again on Saturday to kind of get caught up a little bit with the night haunts. But yeah, so like I said, I got the first 6 done. There are a total of maybe 14 in my entire group. So I need to get the next group of 4. These first 6 that I got done are called Chain Rasps, and the next 4 I'll be doing will be, I believe, something Reapers, Grimghast Reapers, something like that. So yeah, and then I'm slowly finishing up. I was working on those 3 pigs models from Monkstone Miniatures. I was doing those on Twitch before I started doing the Night Hunt stuff, and I got them close to finish, and then I wanted to get the Night Haunts done, and so I'm just finishing up the 3 pigs. Again, it's mainly basing and stuff like that. So,
yep, nice.
Yeah, been keeping busy with the paint stuff on that front there. But yeah, the thing with Essen is going to be cool because I like working with the folks from Board Game Geek on that because it allows me to. It's a bit of a diversification, but it also allows me to hopefully get some folks who are more into board gaming to understand that they could be painting the miniatures that come with their board games, and it's not as hard as they might think. And I like to show a lot of beginner techniques and stuff like that. So hopefully that'll help to get some more people into that hobby as well, because I think it's just a good hobby to be in. It's
if I can do it, folks, anybody can do it.
Right, but it helps to like relieve stress and to hopefully make you feel better and things like that. And as it turns out, currently. We kind of need that, and a lot of other things. Yeah. So
we were basically talking. Was it Monday or I think it was?
I think it was Monday. Yeah.
And it was just like, nothing's while there's not great stuff going on in our lives all the time. There wasn't anything like particularly bad either. But both of us were just talking about how we just were off, and we figured after talking for a while that we probably weren't the only ones out there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just been, unless you've been under a rock, that we've had this sort of global pandemic thing going on for a while now. Here in the U.S., it really started to take off in March. Matt and I actually had just gotten back from the GAMA, the Game Manufacturers Association.
We were even there for actually. We were just finishing up.
We were just getting back from GAMA, the GAMA trade show in Reno, Nevada, which is a big trade show for publishers and game designers and store owners and all kinds of stuff like that. And we had been there with the GameFor booth. And it had already started a little bit in the beginning. Like we had already started, like there were people that were like saying, we're not going to go to the convention because we're concerned and whatnot. And we got back from the convention on Friday the 13th, if I remember correctly, of March.
Yes.
I remember we were flying back on Friday the 13th, and I was like, I don't know if I want to fly on Friday the 13th. And then kind of basically after that is when everything started getting, like locked down and all kinds of stuff like that. So it's been 7-ish months roughly at this point. And so I've been talking to people, on Twitch, and people commenting through, YouTube channel, and people commenting through our YouTube channel for the GameFor podcast and the GameFor stuff. And we've been hearing from people who are like, this is, it's obviously, it's a, even if you're not affected directly, like you're not sick. And even if you've still got, like a job and can still go and work from home or something like that. I mean, those are very obviously very problematic as effects go. I mean,
Right.
even if those things are not in your particular sphere of your life right now, there's still a lot of other things that are affecting us, all of us. I mean, this is like pretty unprecedented, really, within our lifetimes. I mean, people talk about the Spanish flu from the early 1900s and things like that, and but right now, we need to be staying home for the most part. We need to, obviously very, very limited travel, and
Right.
no big groups, right? Which means like no
Yeah,
gaming
little
conventions,
interactions. Right.
you know?
It's 6 feet. It's hard to game with, and
Yeah, yeah. And like I was just mentioning about the Essenspiel doing a digital like virtual convention. That's what most of the big conventions have done so far this year. Gen Con. Let me think. Gen Con. What's another big one that did?
Origins.
Yeah, well, Origins didn't. They were going to, and then they did. They didn't.
Oh,
Um,
that's right.
yeah, they were planning on it, but they didn't do it. But there were. I also worked with. Even there's a couple of like the Board Game Geek and Dice Tower got together and did a virtual convention.
Yep.
And I know that I also did some stuff for virtual San Diego Comic Con. That's the other one I was thinking of. So yeah,
Yes.
there's been some of that, and it's had some success, but it's obviously not the same, and playing in stores, if you're into doing that, like if you're, predominantly it's Magic players and miniatures folks that like to play in stores. Although sometimes you see people who play in stores for D&D and things like that.
In games.
Um,
Yeah.
and even board games once in a while, you'll have some stores that are able to foster a pretty decent board game night. But like all of that stuff's kind of generally on hold. Like one of our local stores here where I live they're looking at probably actually like they've been kind of on and off with the stuff happening in store. Well, they're now looking at actually just because specifically in this part of Wisconsin, the numbers have been crazy lately. So much that we've been ending up in the national news. They're looking at kind of closing down the store, not the store, but the gaming area, and just basically
Oh,
making it more retail area, at least until everything kind of blows over.
right.
Because he's got an entire other store that he uses basically as storage. It's his old store, and he moved into this new store, but he kept renting the old store as storage, and now he's trying to bring that stuff over, and he's going to probably put it
That
in
makes
there.
sense.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of business owners in general who are definitely trying to figure out how to, make changes and things like that. Now,
Oh,
that being
definitely.
said, we're finding that just through our talking to people in the industry, that honestly, the tabletop gaming industry is, for the most part, doing actually surprisingly well.
Yeah, especially from the publisher and the supply side is doing pretty
Hmm.
good. Sounded like even like game stores, now that they've kind of accepted the new norm, um, for the most part are doing all right, especially as the supply line gets a little bit more robust. I know that there was some stuff with distribution centers being closed and stuff like that
Hmm.
that delayed or severely hit release dates and everything else. But as that stuff is starting to kind of become more standard, it sounds like even that's kind of helped out to the point where some of them are actually even having like record years for selling stuff. Like,
It depends on the store. I think if the store is very Magic the Gathering heavy, they're
mhm.
having a bit of a rough time. And the
Right, yeah,
reason,
right,
yeah, because the Magic the Gathering crowd, they can't get together and play Friday Night Magic and all that kind of stuff. Like that's not just like the stores. That's the publisher is just saying we're not. You shouldn't be doing it. And if you're
right,
doing it and registering in the DCI, from what I've been told by a friend of mine who owns a store, that the DCI is like, don't put numbers in here because you're not supposed to be doing it because it's a whole thing. So like Wizards has been saying, look, stop doing it. But that being said, there's also now Magic the Gathering Arena, which is I I think it's a PC game. It's maybe on PlayStation and stuff like that too. I don't know, but it's a video game version,
Right.
and I know a lot of people who have been playing Magic for a long time are now moving to that because they can still play games and still keep their chops up or whatever. But
Hmm.
because of that, if you're a store owner and if you were heavily into Magic, probably you're seeing sales down. Now, on the other hand, if you were pushing into stuff specifically like miniatures, I know Games Workshop is doing record numbers, and I know several other paint manufacturers and things like that are doing like just absolutely banging business right now because so many people are kind of sitting at home and like, well, I got a bunch of extra time, I
Right.
can get some painting done, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a sec. But getting together even to play with your friends, like if you were just going to be like, hey, let's get together and just play over at my house, in a lot of situations is not a great idea either. Um, just because, and it kind of depends on where you live and things like that. But you may get sick, and you may be young enough and healthy enough that it's fine, but you could also potentially get it and give it to somebody else who is maybe older or got some other sort of health problem, and so these are always the things that we're that we're concerned with, and so that's the kind of stuff that can be, obviously, for a person who's been a serious gamer or even a semi-serious gamer for a while, someone who's been playing a lot, all of a sudden you're in a situation where now you're not able to do it as much, and that can wear on you.
Right. Or just,
Yeah.
just the monotony of the days. I know that,
Hmm.
there's some times when I'm like, oh, it's the weekend. Okay. I guess that just means I don't log into my computer. Everything else is pretty much the same.
Sure. Right. Yeah. You're kind of not going too many places and all that kind of stuff. So obviously, and you've probably felt this as I have, and as you, the listener, probably have. There's, even though you're not doing much necessarily, it still increases anxiety and stress. And so the idea, hopefully, is that with tabletop gaming, we can find ways to um, reduce that to some degree, or at least help to mitigate it in some fashion. And you were talking a little bit about like nostalgia and comfort games to make you like feel better. Like, is that a
Yeah.
thing? I'm assuming that's something you do yourself personally.
Yeah. Well, and it was kind of something I had read about, I don't know, several months ago. It was talking
Hmm.
about, the reason why some people will go and watch old shows again, and or read an old book, a book that they've read before.
Hmm.
And there's definitely people that will absolutely never do that. I know my mom will never watch a movie if she's seen it before for some reason.
Hmm.
But whereas I find comfort in just watching it over and over again, and that they've started doing studies, and they found that people that are more prone or more likely to do that kind of thing are usually people that have more anxiety or stress issues, because it's for them, they don't have to go through that whole like first, second, third stage of the build up, the tension, and you know the conclusion of stuff. They they know that how everything's going to end, that this is going to be okay, and all this stuff, so that the anxiety doesn't build up through it, so they find
Oh,
more
sure.
comfort watching that kind of stuff than doing new stuff. um and I so I've seen that with myself. I've been rewatching old shows a lot more often lately. Definitely finding that watching lighter stuff, like rather than watching something that's really deep and dark, while I still like that from time to time, there's sometimes I'll just put on a, some kind of situation comedy that most of the time I might have been like, that's gonna be kind of boring or not really my thing. But sometimes just having that like non emotional investment in the characters, and just know that, oh,
Hmm.
by the end of the 30 minutes or 22 minutes or whatever it is, everything's going to work out and everything's going to just be fine again, is good. And so I've been kind of looking at that with games as well. Like,
Yeah.
right now, do I want to spend 6 hours playing a really deep game, or am I finding that even playing some silly games like Apples to Apples, or Cards Against Humanity, or stuff where it's more
With the family and whatnot.
lightweight. Yeah, lightweight with a family, not very deep.
Hmm.
I know, like, even some like the like the traditional family games that you would have gotten at your local stores back before board games became kind of the like your sorries and stuff like that. Like
Sure.
games that are like a year ago, I would have been like, oh, do we really have to play that? I'm kind of going, yeah, that doesn't seem too bad. Like, maybe sorry's not too bad. Like the whole randomness and non deep thinking, non commitment thing isn't
Hmm.
as bad as I used to think it was. Or at least right now it just kind of gives that nostalgia and easy and comforting feeling is worth more than a super thorough high intensity game scoring mechanic or something.
Hmm.
So
No, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. As far I can also, I do like, as far as like, there's certain movies I do like to watch repeatedly. There's some that I'm just like, well, I've seen it, and it doesn't matter to me whether I see it again or not. But there are certain movies, like, specifically, that I'm a fan of. But there's also, I'm finding, and this is true with games as well currently, like especially the beginning part of this whole thing, there were certain themes I just was not interested in playing with while I was, in
right,
the beginning parts. Like I didn't want to play any post-apocalyptic stuff. You know what I mean?
right.
And I've always been a big fan. I love post-apocalyptic stuff generally, but the beginning parts of this, I was just like, nope, don't want to do it. Nope. Um, like, and even like I wasn't really playing a lot once the pandemic started, because again, usually, need to play with other people and stuff like that. I mean, although we have talked in the past about, solo games and stuff like that and playing remotely. I've done a little bit of remote play. You've done a bit more. But like the remote play that I've done has been fantasy stuff, and the remote play that you've done has been, well, obviously the D&D stuff is a fantasy stuff,
Hmm.
and then you've also been playing some Star Wars
Imperial
stuff.
Salt. Yep.
Yeah, Imperial Assault. So, but yeah, I've just like, even video games. The video games that I do play, which I don't play that frequently, but I do play from time to time, are either the stuff I wanted to play was either like exploration. Like I couldn't really go too many places, but I could explore this weird
Mm.
like
Yeah,
alien
yeah,
world.
yeah.
Like I was playing this game called Astroneer for a while, and even some like Minecraft and stuff like that. Again, exploration. Um, at one point I started getting, and I've still been into it now, but I hadn't played Grand Theft Auto 5 for a while. But at one point I just wanted to like walk around in a city and have other people around and stuff like that. And so doing that in Grand Theft Auto, admittedly, there are people, in flying motorcycles and missile launchers and stuff like that. But still,
Right.
it was also, it seemed like a bit of normality. So I think that,
Hmm.
like understanding the theme of the game that you're looking at, and again, it could be something very, very simple that's like a comfort game, like a Monopoly that you remember from when you were a kid, or maybe it's Carcassonne or something like that, which has got a very, again, like a theme of basically just like, kind of grabbing
Building and
fantasy,
yeah,
yeah,
building and
building
having
and
fun.
exactly, yeah, yeah, yeah. So I think that the themes and that kind of thing can definitely hurt or help. You know what I mean? Like sitting down and being like, man, I'm really stressed. Well, I'll play this, like a video game. I'll play this like multi-person or multiplayer, like FPS, super competitive, stressful game. Maybe not the great idea right now. Um,
Right. Yeah, like
and
I'm not missing out playing Pandemic with my friends right now.
right,
For some reason.
exactly.
Like
Also, not necessarily something that you're interested in. I can totally understand that. So yeah, like, so the thing is about like trying to play games right now. We're in a limited pool of people we can play with. Generally, you're either playing with your family, whether it's your significant other or significant other and kids, or extended family that you might be living with, something like that. And that gives you obviously specific things that you can do, specific types of games you can play, or you get into something like remote gaming or solo gaming. I've done a little bit of solo gaming, and I've done a little bit of remote. Have you done any solo gaming during this time?
um not really. I know that
Hmm.
I've looked into it a little bit. I think I've yeah, I haven't really done much outside of some video games and stuff like that. But yeah,
Sure. Yeah.
actual
Yeah.
board games and stuff. I don't think I've done any solo stuff.
Hmm.
At least nothing that's coming to mind right now. I know I've looked into a bunch of stuff, especially when we were researching for the episode. But
Yeah. Yeah. Episode
like
24, in case people are wondering. Yeah, episode 24, we talked about solo games. The only solo gaming that I've really done, it has been, I've messed with this skirmish miniature game called Planet 28, which I like, and it's kind of a very indie kind of game, and they well, he Nick, who's the only he's the person who made it. He released some solo rules and co-op rules, and so I was messing with those because I do want to do a battle report. So I've been messing with that. But otherwise, as far as remote play, I've remote played on Tabletop Simulator with my friend Malev, and we played Relic Blade, which is a fantasy kind of skirmish miniatures game. And like I said, you've been playing D&D with Roll20 with a group, right? Yep. And also you guys have been playing Imperial Assault sometimes.
Right, and some other RPGs.
Fantasy Flight. Yeah, and you said, there's been some other RPGs as well. So you've been doing a lot more of the remote stuff. And the remote stuff we talked about in episode 22. So if you're interested in trying to find some ways to do some of that stuff, you can let's check out those episodes as well if you haven't already. But besides playing with your gaming, there's also other ways to find like positive, and I don't want to say busy work, because I don't think it's busy work if it's if it helps you out, if it helps kind of like reduce stress and things like that. And I've always been a big fan of painting miniatures to reduce stress, telling people about how it's a good hobby. You're focusing on something, you're working with your hands, and this is even before the pandemic and everything like that.
Right. But no, you've always been the kind of the Bob Ross of
well, I don't know about that,
miniatures.
But I certainly don't have his hair. But it's but it's not just for miniatures. Yeah, exactly. It's not just minis. I mean, obviously you can now that frankly we kind of have extra time, because we're not going and doing outdoor stuff as much. I mean, you still might be going out and hiking and doing things like that and whatever, but like a lot of activities, like you with 3 children had a lot more sports stuff that you used to have to take care of.
Oh yeah, it was insane. Yeah. Like we would, basically from the time we got done school until like 9 o'clock at night, I was busy, and then usually 1 or 2 days a weekend, all the time. It was just just what it was. If I could game once every 3 or 4 weeks, I thought that was a huge win. Whereas now it's like, when we go to figure out like the next D&D session, it used to be like we had to like plan out for the 6 of us like 6 to 7 weeks out just to hope to get a date that we could all kind of commit to. And now it's like, well, I guess we could do next week.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, finding time has never been a little easier, honestly, in a lot of these situations. And that's a lot of tabletop gamers are finding that as well, because it used to be a lot of, with me, we don't have any kids, but there was a bunch of traveling, for going to conventions for the YouTube channel and stuff like that. And just other things, and so that would mess up schedules sometimes and things like that. But now it's sort of nice to have the extra time to find that kind of stuff. Like if you're a board gamer, you may not be able to play directly with people other than maybe your family or something like that. Right. But you now have time, all those times when you open up a box, a box of board games, and you're just like, oh, this is such a mess and everything's all over the place. I wish I had little baggies for each, like, different color of meeples, and I wish I had this and I had these things set up, and I really got to get more sleeves or rubber bands that broke or whatever, all that kind of stuff. Now is the time. You can go through all of your board games. So you got that giant wall of board games in your game room or your basement or whatever. Now is the time in which you can go through them and determine like which ones need to be refreshed in some fashion. Like, do I need to sleeve the cards? Do I need to reorganize? Did we put this together in a mess last time, because we wanted to go do something else?
I've been seeing some really cool stuff being posted like on Instagram and other online like Twitter and stuff like that, of like people that have come up with some organization projects. Some have just been doing like, creating their own like 3D prints that just fit in boxes. Like I saw one just the other day that they did one for Munchkin. They were sick of the cards being messed up every time they open it. and
Mm-hmm.
now like the dice and everything all fit into it, and it actually looked really well done. It looked like it come off the assembly line because it even had like the Munchkin logo kind of like indented into it and stuff like
That's
that.
fancy. Yeah, I
But
mean, like, if you've got a 3D printer, like you could start to that becomes a new
right,
project to work on to get your mind off of stuff is to 3D print cool divider things for the insides of your board game boxes and
right.
stuff like
But I
that.
know that like
Yeah.
it seems like everybody's buying more stuff online right now. So you've got
Mm-hmm.
boxes. I mean, cut up those cardboard and make
Oh
cardboard
yeah,
dividers and stuff. I mean, yeah,
yeah.
there's
If you don't have a
tons
3D
of
printer,
projects
you
out there.
probably got scrap cardboard. That's a very good point. Yeah, we just got rid of a whole bunch of scrap cardboard, and I had used some of it because I bought. Um, you know those things that you put in your closet? They hang off the pole that you put your you hang your clothes on, and it's like a cloth kind of like series of vertical boxes. Like there's a thing that
Oh yeah,
goes,
yeah, yeah. Okay, now I know
and
what you're. Yep.
it's yeah, and it's generally used for shoes, right? For the most
Right.
part. And they have
Yep.
like a soft bottom to each of the like little shelves. It's like a vertical.
Yep.
This one's like 7 shelves maybe, and you hang it off the pole and all that kind of stuff. I was looking at this spot in my basement right near my painting area, and I'm like, if I could get one of those that had like a harder surface to the bottom of each of those shelves, it would be perfect. And I looked and looked and looked, and they're all kind of soft on the bottom. So I just bought one. And then when it showed up, I happened to have a box of that something had shipped in a big box that had like I think double thickness corrugate. Like it was this huge box. I got
Okay.
some lighting equipment in, so I used the corrugate and I cut it up to the exact right size, which is like 11.5 by 11.5, and I just slid the cardboard into the bottom of each one of those shelves, and now it sits just out of view in the camera, but it's over to the wall in my basement, hanging off of the joist, and I just have this very skinny, like hanging from the ceiling, like now 7 shelf little thing just to put like models I'm working on and like extra stuff and all kinds of things like that. And so, yeah, just finding little projects like that and potentially using cardboard, for making little things like that, I think is a great way to just kind of feel like you're getting crafty. And it's stuff that you would have thought was a really good idea, before, but you're just like, yeah, but I got to just find the time, And there's so many more times
Right.
when you're like, but I'd rather just play a game than think about, taking the box apart and trying to figure out a better way to put it back together again or something like
Right. I'm
that.
just happy I had time to play the game, much less try to organize it. And now
Right.
the opposite is true.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's a big deal. I think that you can do that, go through your board games and figure that stuff out. Plus, you can also figure out, and we've talked about this in the past. I didn't look this one up. I forget what the episode number is, but
Oh,
there was an
there's like
episode where we talked about
there's
like like when it's time to let go of games.
right.
Now's the time when there are people out there who are also like, well, I'm kind of interested in some games, and they're maybe looking on eBay, and then you could maybe be getting rid of some games that you haven't used in a long time. Now's the time to at least very least go through and
Right.
look and determine, am I still interested in this game? Is this a thing I still want to do? There's also, honestly, it's a good time now too. If it's a game you do like, to go check the website and see if there's an FAQ, see if there's any
Right. Updates,
like
expansions,
cheat sheets
rules.
that helps you understand the rules better, all kinds of stuff like that.
Right. And there could be some craft stuff you do with it too. Like, maybe it just comes with like cardboard cutouts or stuff like that, and you want to like
Hmm.
craft some new stuff. I know I've been getting into a couple of YouTube channels where they're just crafting stuff like from stuff around the house, basically, like Pringle cans and uh, pieces of
Like
like, discarded plastic and
for
everything
like
else, and then
fantasy towers and stuff like that, for like almost like
yeah, well, they were
terrain and
even
stuff.
like he did like one. He made like a whole like train, like a steampunk train, like locomotive out of it.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And he even did like LED wiring and all that stuff. So he got really fancy with it, but it was mostly stuff from just around his house that he just challenged himself to do.
Hmm.
For a particular game, he wanted the setting in that.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too, is if you're a board gamer and you've got a bunch of board games that have a lot of miniatures in them, now's also a good time to start looking into trying to paint them. Like I said earlier, like that's the kind of stuff that I've been focusing on a little bit with the folks from Board Game Geek for some of these virtual conventions. But if you're a player of Shadows of Brimstone, or I don't know, all kinds of different things. A lot of the miniature games, a lot of the board games these days come with a lot of miniatures. And so if you're thinking to yourself, well, I always wanted to think about trying to paint these miniatures, but I also like to play it a lot, so I didn't want to have the downtime of them, being on my painting table, or I've never even painted before and I don't even have a painting table, whatever. Now is the time to start looking into that as well, not just for board game folks, but also obviously for the people. Like, there's going to be, when this is finished, there will be a lot of people in the wargaming miniature world who will show up to conventions, shops, their local club, whatever, with fully painted armies. Finally, hopefully, more than there were before. At least, there are still always going to be people who show up and are like, well, had that whole pandemic and I was totally going to paint some stuff, but then I just started, watching anime or whatever it was that draws your attention. And there's nothing wrong with that. Whatever you got to do to get through it. But now is a time when you can get a bunch of things done. You've got the extra time. You've got and like I've been saying for years, the painting tabletop miniatures and things like that, in my mind, is a very cool hobby because it does help to focus your mind. It's a stress relief. You're working with your hands. You can listen to a podcast, you can listen to an audiobook, you can be whatever. Maybe you can watch something while you're doing it. I can't do that myself because then I end up just watching the show and I did stop painting. But other people can do that kind of stuff. And it helps, like kind of center you a little bit, for lack of a better term. It helps to kind of calm things down. Your thought process is predominantly on, like, let's say the audiobook you might be listening to and what you're doing in front of you, that kind of stuff. So you have the time, and you can also start learning new techniques potentially, or you could decide to start trying your hand at, kit bashing, models, scratch building terrain. There's a lot of stuff that you can do, and you don't need other people around to do it. It can be kind of solitary, but you can also use that time if you're interested. And I know you've done a bit of this, but you can also use it to sort of teach your kids, like if you're, or friends or family or whatever, who are interested, how to do this kind of stuff.
Yeah, I was just talking to someone just this week about using the WizKid pre-primed minis for teaching kids and other people to do paintings, because that mixed with like contrast paints, which helps with a lot of the shading and highlighting, out of the bag. It's not perfect, but I mean, for the beginner, it's a huge quick elevation. You can get some pretty decent looking miniatures pretty quickly from new people and get them really excited. Like, wow, I didn't know I could even come close to making it look like that.
Yeah, WizKids has got a line of fantasy miniatures, both for D&D and Pathfinder, I believe, and they are they're inexpensive. They're plastic, and they are basically, you can paint right on them because they say that they're pre-primed. So normally with a model, you have to build it and then spray primer it. These are already built and already have a primer on them, so you can just immediately start painting over them. And the contrast paint you were talking about is Games Workshop's contrast paint. It's a new line of paints that is designed, you put it on kind of thick, and it's a kind of transparent paint, but it pools in all the recesses and then gets a little bit darker.
It's kind of a wash and a paint in one, yeah.
Yeah. So the idea that, like, initially when they first launched that contrast line, they were aiming it towards like maybe newer painters or people who were trying to paint quickly. But a lot of folks like myself who've been doing it for a while have found the real benefit in using them as well. Not as the entirety of the model, but as to help speed things along in certain spots. I find that they're kind of invaluable in a lot of different places, and I've been using them a lot. Generally over kind of a different, like I prime everything black and then I spray it from above with like a white before I start painting, and then that gives it this sort of kind of like lighting from above, like the sun is coming down and hitting the model and stuff like that, but you still get shadows on the armpits and underneath, all the dark parts that it should be. And so, yeah, learning these new techniques, and Lord knows if you want to learn new techniques, there's YouTube that will give you a zillion and a half different techniques for your for your miniature painting and things like that. Now's a good time to watch a bunch of that stuff if you can. You got some extra time and you're tired of Netflix or whatever. Watch a bunch of those things, find some new people to follow on YouTube and learn how to paint miniatures, whether you're a war gamer or whether you're a board gamer, or even if maybe, you like other types of games, you like D&D and you've got a whole bunch of kobolds and you're a GM, you can probably very quickly paint kobolds, and go that direction. And if you're like a CCG person, if you're into collectible card games, you can definitely also take this time to some degree to go through, you've been going and playing every Friday night at the Friday Night Magic at your local shop, and you spend time doing that and other tournaments and things like that. But now you've got time to sit down and actually go through all of the cards and all of the boxes underneath your bed and in your closet and all those places and
Right.
start to determine, like, do I need this one? Do I need that one? Maybe it's just into organizing. Maybe it's just like everything's all over the place and it's hard to find. Now you can organize it, make it easier to find. So when you need to build decks again, you'll be able to find the cards that you want from the different sets, the different rarities, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I think that kind of stuff is also a good thing to focus on currently because you've got the time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and like maybe you've never DM'd before, you've always DM'd, doing like pre-built campaigns.
Hmm.
Start building your own worlds or your own campaign settings and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't get to use it, but it'll be fun to kind of play around with,
Well,
or like another
it'll
like yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, it becomes a creative outlet for you because,
Hmm.
yeah, you can, it gives you something to think about other than what's going on. It gives you something to think about that allows you to have a lot more control. And right now, most of us, or a lot of us at least, don't have a lot of control in the things that they want to do every day. And so being able to say, I'm going to build my own world so that we can either play this campaign virtually or remotely or however, or I'm going to build it and work on it. And so when we can start playing back in person again, my gaming group, I'll have this whole thing constructed because it's hard when you are preparing for gaming now.
Hmm.
You're preparing every week or every 2 weeks for your thing, and you're like the DM. It's hard to then also be working on something separate or something new. And this again gives you a
Right.
little bit more time. So
Right. Or maybe, like I know a lot of people have always, it seems like every gamer at some point has come up with like, you know, now's the time I'm gonna build my game, or like, start
oh yeah.
prototyping it. Like, now you can write out your rules, you can start
Hmm.
coming up with the game pieces, all this stuff, like get stuff prepped for that you want to, that you've been putting in the back burner.
It's always been something where generally, I don't know, I feel as if, first of all, almost any gamer, once they've been doing it long enough, if you've been gaming long enough, your the potential, the chance that you will probably start working on your own game design gets higher and higher every year
Hmm.
that you're a gamer. Not all gamers try to become game designers at some point, but a lot of them do. And the longer you've been a gamer, the more likely you're going to try to be a game designer and to go down that road. And the thing that's so interesting, and this is coming from a person who has been a game designer before. I have designed a couple of different games with a friend of mine. Um, but it was back in the mid 90s and the early 2000s. I mean, even now today, there are so many more like, obviously,
Resources.
like, yeah, I mean, like, you could design a game and sell it as a PDF, and there are multiple different places you could sell it, or you could sell it direct through your own website using something like, I don't know, Squarespace or Wix or one of those places. Finding a plugin that allows you to sell PDFs, you could sell direct that way. I mean, there's so many different ways you could sell a game and also sell STL files for your 3D printer, so people could print out their own board or print out their own playing pieces or what. I mean, like, there's
Right.
so many different things you can do now as a game designer. And now is the time to be able to focus on it if you're interested in going down that road. It's a good way to get going.
Absolutely.
Have you thought about doing any game design?
Um, Not really. I do see the barrier. It was like a no. I will never ever do a game. To the barriers have definitely come down.
Hmm.
To the point where if someone's like, "Oh, that'd be cool to work on," I would be like, "Oh, I'd probably help you with that." Like,
Well, you've done some 3D design stuff for gaming, though, haven't you?
yeah, I have. I've done some
Yeah,
pieces and stuff like that. So I mean, yeah,
that's
I
that's heading in
just
that direction.
yeah. So I'm getting there. It
Yeah, yeah.
sounds like. Have you've been talking about possibly doing something, maybe? Or?
Yeah, I've had some ideas. Again, like I said, back in the kind of early to mid '90s, me and a friend started a small little game company, a little hobby press, as it was known back then, meaning that you had a day job and this was just something you did for fun. Um,
Right.
But I mean, we had a booth at Gen Con back when booths at Gen Con were considerably cheaper. And, back when it was still in Milwaukee and, there was like 16 to 17,000 people showing up. Now it's 70,000 people showing up and it's in Indianapolis and the booths are a lot more expensive. But yeah, and we sold it, like our first game was, we sold it. We got it printed at the local Kinko's and we packaged it ourselves and put it into, remember jewel cases, like in CDs, the plastic case that goes around the CD? You know what I'm talking about? Yeah. So we needed a package to be able to put these games in, but we didn't want to buy 1,000 or 10,000 boxes. We needed something that we could buy in small quantities. So we bought these plastic jewel cases from the local CD shop. And then we just made sure that everything fit inside the jewel case. And then we got them shrink wrapped at a local company here in town. And then we sold them that way. And people would be like, "Oh, so it's a computer game?" You'd be like, "No, it's not a computer game. There's no disc in there. It's just everything fits inside there, so it's nice and you can throw it." And they would be like, "Oh," and so we had to answer that question a lot. But I mean, nowadays that exact same game we just sell as a PDF, so people can buy it and print it out and things like that. But we'd still, at this point, we don't really go forward with the company too much anymore or do any more design. But we designed 3 different games, and it's fun. But nowadays, I think it would be, like I said, potentially a lot easier, especially with 3D printing and doing all those different types of things. I mean, in Kickstarter, there was no Kickstarter back then, so yeah,
Right.
there's a lot of options to you to do things with your time. You think about making a campaign, like rather than designing an entire game, you thought about just making your own campaign setting?
Yeah, that I've definitely have started coming up with some ideas. Probably would start off with some one shots or small campaigns versus a full blown campaign. But yeah, definitely. Now that I've especially started being able to run more and seeing kind of like what stuff I like, what stuff I'm like, yeah, I could go without it. And I've had time, like YouTube for me used to be a very rare occasion for me to watch, whereas now I watch probably, I don't know if it's half my time, but a good deal of my time is now YouTube. So I've found a lot more stuff with like,
You mean of
like
your screen time, not just
my
half of
screen
the day.
time. Yeah, like
Yeah,
I'm watching
not 12 hours a day. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. No.
Yeah.
No. It hasn't gone that bad yet.
Yeah.
But I'm watching like some channels that are just like D&D puzzles, like, and they're just kind of like riddles and stuff like that. I'm like, okay, I see how that game can be cool, and I'm understanding more of how that stuff is and what stuff I like, so I could definitely see myself throwing that out there of that's what I'm gonna do this. But
could you make a cool like one shot like campaign setting, whether it would be specifically for D&D 5th edition or whether it would be agnostic or something like that? You could kind of do something like that and then make it a free PDF and then let people who follow the GameFor podcast know about it, and then they can download it and go from there.
That's a good idea.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot of time that we've got in our hands, and there's obviously some stress and anxiety and things like that. And so I've found that it's helped to stay busy and to try to get basically like my mind on other things, and tabletop gaming I think can help a lot with that. It's way better than looking at the news or Twitter.
Right. Yeah. Like I used to love like Aaron Schwartz TV and movies and stuff like that, the very political stuff. Like I loved watching that, and my taste for that has gone out the window the past couple of years. Like,
oh yeah,
like I don't care anything about knowing about the conspiracies or whatever's going on in government. Like that's not my entertainment. I want something happy and fun.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, that's really the whole point of gaming. Games should be fun. I've been saying that for years. And so, if you're, finding that you've got some, like I said, some issues and you're bummed out, then focus a little bit more on your tabletop gaming, even if it's something you can't do with your friends right now, because you don't play remotely or anything like that. Just start going through your board game collection and figuring out, well, I could reorganize this, or I could 3D print a cool divider that goes in this box, or, build stuff out of cardboard, whatever. There's a lot of different options. There's a lot of different things you can do to kind of focus your time. And many of us have got a lot of time these days. So hopefully this will help a bit. But yeah, absolutely. So we got anything else? You got any other ideas or or
No,
points?
yeah, just find what's enjoying about it. Don't play games to stress yourself out. Don't
Yeah.
stress about not playing certain games. Find something that's fun. And enjoy it. Like find stuff to look at the positive side of things right now. And
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, again, I want to thank you folks for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player or just aren't into the whole YouTube comment section thing, which I can understand, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@imgamefor.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And you can also check out our website at www.imgamefor.com. That is www.iamgamefor.com. Thanks.
Thanks.